Ladies and gents, welcome to the Equity Guru Investor Roundtable. A mixed bag of humanoids, a mixed bag of companies in the platforming software Web 3.0 territory. I'm Rob outside the basement, Galen inside the basement, Vishal inside the gold vault, and Chris McGrizzly Perry up in the far corner. And he's going to start us off as we talk about Optiva in Mississauga, Ontario, Amped Ventures in Vancouver, AMPD on the Canadian Exchange. By the way, Optiva is OPT on the Toronto. And Verses, who we've recently joined forces with. That is spelled, the company, VERSES. VERS on the NEO Exchange under Gabe Renee. Mr. Perry, you have the often difficult task of trying to kind of keep it simple in a territory that is very complex.
Yeah, I think at least two of these three companies, the challenge that they face is one where people in their business know what they do. People they're selling to understand what they do, but everybody else kind of looks at it with like googly eyes and says, what now? If you think that explaining crypto to Mama and Papa and Grampy is difficult, try explaining platform as a service or virtual movie production or high performance computing. Back in the old days, we used to have rooms full of servers that would tell you what 2 + 2 was. Then we had rooms full of servers that could send you the copy of the Queen's Gambit that you wanted to watch. Now we're starting to look at things like 5G Wi-Fi, where information could be jumping not just back and forth between user and sender, but between appliances and sensors and cities and streets and cars. So now we need that server space for the everything. And so a company like Amped basically is looking at the internet and saying it used to just be, I would like to watch this episode. Thank you. Please send it to me. And now the internet is more two-way, three-way, five-way, 10-way. So large companies that are dealing with things like artificial intelligence, that are dealing with things like big data, they don't just need to send information one way, but they need to get it in all manner of ways. And they need it to be crunched in real time and sent back. So high performance computing is a lot more than just sticking a server out there and having a copy of Amazon Web Services. You really need your server farm to be high level, to be as close as possible to the origin point of your information. You need points of presence out there on the internet where people can connect in a way that goes above Webpoint 2.0 to Webpoint 3.0. And by Web 3.0, I don't just mean crypto. In fact, I don't even mean crypto. Crypto is kind of like a large, clunky piece of technology that doesn't really do the purpose that it was set for. Really, what you're looking at now is, let's say you're a Ford Motor Company and you're trying to keep an eye on every aspect of your business, internationally, locally. You're looking at finances, you're looking at supply chains, you're looking at the layout of your factory, you're looking at manpower, maximizing every part of your chain. You can't just do that by having a go over the clipboard and a calculator standing there measuring how fast the line is going. You can't do it by waiting for people to self-report when there's a problem. You really need sensors and artificial intelligence cameras, and you need every part of your process to talk to every other part of your process. That part of things is where Verses comes in that they are using what's called spatial AI. So they're not just like calculating data points, but they're looking at where the data sits in real time in the world. The camera being able to make calculations itself rather than going to the internet and waiting for some server off in the distance to make calculations. Amped is engaged in virtual movie production, where instead of going out and building a set for $3 million in Morocco, you can have your actors surrounded by a giant LED screen that runs a video game engine software that creates the background on the fly, depending on where the camera is in relation to the actor. All of these things are aspects of not just the internet, but life itself as a corporation in a technology world that people don't yet understand exist, let alone have taken the time to plug into their businesses. But as corporations become aware of what is more and more possible out there in the world, the one thing that we realize is that you need a whole lot bigger internet to make it work, and a whole lot better servers to make it work, and smarter platforms to make it work. And these companies are on the forefront of providing that service to those companies. Their stock charts aren't necessarily through the roof just yet, because people really don't understand what's possible and what is now being created. But as people do get more aware of it, I'm convinced that all of these companies are going to be worth a lot more than what they are today.
And Galen, Chris got a little bit into two of the companies. Optiva is another one of the three that you wrote about, because you wrote about this kind of platform software Web 3.0 element here today on the website on equity.guru. So what can we add?
Well, Optiva is a software as a service company that provides the opportunity for telecoms to monetize their service, I should say, in unique ways, as most digital providers do already, but the transition has yet to be made. So they bring it all under one roof and allow different companies, whether they're the actual cell phone providers themselves, meaning like, let's say, Rogers, who owns their own network and runs their own network, or providers like Fido that sit on top of that and want to provide their services. It gives them the opportunity to sort of easily control, without the additional software, without the additional administrative support and IT support, to be able to bring their solutions together in a bespoke situation, so they can actually transition to the new world of digital content provision. And be able to have that interactivity that everybody is so demanding, as Chris said, these days. We're no longer being a passive user. We really want to get in there and have this thing talk to us on a minute-to-minute accurate basis, and us to be able to get actionable data from that, as well as be able to create our own solutions in real time and have that carried out on the other end. So these companies are pretty well like on the forefront of that. And that's basically where we're at. We've created all these resources. We've thrown out all this really big data. We have this opportunity with all these sensors and stuff. These companies are allowing us to knit that network together and essentially allow us to, God forbid me using the word Web 3.0, because I think it gets brutalized out there. People don't necessarily understand what it means. They just keep saying it. And a lot of companies that go out there and say that, along with saying that they're AI, and they don't really understand what they're doing. They basically have a chat bot and, that's AI. It's not. So these companies are really helping us. And because of that, I think they have a problem too, as Chris mentioned earlier, not just communicating with the investment community, but also in visibility, because they're the foundation. They're the infrastructure. They are what behind is making everything work. They don't get out in front. They don't have to. That's not what their story is. So there's a hard way, or it's hard for them to get their story told. And Chris says, admittedly right now, their charts are showing an emerging company, an emerging process. But realistically, these companies are building the foundation for the next 50 years. So we're probably going to see some value return on what they have to offer. And, Amped has had some great news flow over the last little while in terms of deals and getting their products out there. The month of June has been very good to them. And I'm sure that this company has, some great stories to be told in the future. I'm really looking forward to see how they perform. As well as Versus. I mean, right. They're going to be basically, Google has sort of underpinned the market for mobile apps, and Versus is going to be the company that pins together the AI applications, all these supply chain monitoring and carrying back and forth. This is how big they could get. So there you go.
You raise a good point. Next step. You raise a good point on the invisibility side of things. Remember in leading up to 2000 with the dot-com bubble, Oracle was a company that nobody could get enough of, because it was underpinning the internet. And of course, when the internet bubble, popped, so did Oracle. But nobody really understood what Oracle did. They just knew that it was the stuff that ran the internet. And these companies are the new Oracle. Hopefully not at the end.
And Larry Ellison, the owner of it, still made enough money to buy the island of Lanai, so he did okay. I'm getting the message here, Vishal, that it's not about the ball bearings anymore. Unfortunately, it's it's a little more complex than that. How are the charts doing on our wide variety of companies that we're talking about here?
Yeah, so as both Galen and Chris mentioned, the charts are in ranges, maybe creating a bottom. And I actually, when Chris mentioned Oracle, I was like, hey, let's just take a look at Oracle on the monthly chart. Here it is with the .com bubble. So we're hoping we're somewhere around here at this basing stage when we look at the companies here today. So let's start with Optiva here. I'm on the monthly. I want to bring it back down on the daily because that's the one that makes sense to us all. And I mean, take a look at it. It's quite the roller coaster ride from 2019 to present day. Highs at $58, lows down at $18. Makes sense. That was during the whole pandemic trading era around 2020 there, early 2020. A lot of stocks were feeling the pinch there. And then just as other stocks bounce, so the Optiva here going from $24 back up to just under 58. And then from summer of 2020 to the end of 2021, really, just look at this downtrend. I'm assuming it's earning reports not coming out as well as expected. Took the stock back down near pre-pandemic pandemic levels, and since then we've just been ranging once again since 2021. And well, so here we are, just close to $20, which was, I think, I'm sort of like, as a technical trader, I'm a bit upset that I missed that, just because it was quite close to the lows that we saw in the pandemic era. So I think that would have been a good area to maybe get in, and you can see we did see some buyers step in just before that, taking the price up here to $23.43. And going forward now, it's really about that $20 zone. And if OPT can build some momentum and get a catalyst to give us a breakout above $30. We do have earnings coming out in August. That maybe could be the beginning of a catalyst. And as Galen said, that they are sort of doing a new corporate they have a new corporate agenda here. Perhaps we'll see that start to pay off in August, and that could be the catalyst going forward. Let's look at Ant before we look at Versus, just because Versus, you'll see what we talk about when we look at the Versus chart. Ant has not changed since we've spoken about the technicals. We talked about that bounce above 10 cents. We had a lot of buyers stepping in. And I talked about this breakout above 18.5 to 19 cents. That was the resistance level that we were testing. We attempted to break out in early or mid-May. Didn't work. We tried to break out again in early June. It didn't work. And I highlighted this support at 14 cents. And if we can, range maybe between 14 cents up to 18.5 cents, waiting for that breakout, that would get things going. So since mid-May to present day, we are still within that range, just waiting patiently for that breakout. If we break below 14 cents, we're likely going back to 10. However, if we break above 18.5 cents, I think we can make a run back up to 30 cents. And I find this interesting because, there has been a lot of press releases. As Galen mentioned, there was a lot of metaverse headlines as well, which actually did get the stock going earlier on in May. But as a technical trader, it's a range, right? So we are potentially bottoming here, but we just want that breakout to indicate where the next move is going to be, if it's going to be a bullish move or if it's going to be a bearish move. Finally, on Versus, so we're not going to look at my chart here. We're going to go to Yahoo Finance because this stock just recently IPO'd and has 3 days of trading action. On the day we're recording, a nice 12% gain here on Versus Technologies on the NEO exchange. So as typical, when there's an IPO, the stock tends to drop a little bit just because you see early investors take some profits, right? So we did open around 45 cents. We hit lows below 40 cents. And since then, actually, the the day after the IPO, those 2 trading days have been green so far. So we did see a bounce at 38.5 cents, and 50 cents is very important for me. You know, that's just a very important psychological number that we are working with, and I think it's more relevant now just because we don't have, you know, much price action to work with. So I will be watching what happens here around 50 cents, and you can say we have some support here at 45 cents. But you know, you guys sort of know how I take IPOs. I like to just wait a little bit, give this some time to develop some levels that we can work with. However, you know, if you're excited about their technology for the long term, I think this is, you know, a great time to be looking at, you know, establishing a large position for the long term.
Yeah, there's a good transition point back to Chris in terms of whether or not you're spending much of your $7,500 on any of these guys when you consider how long you wait off the IPO with Versus.
Yeah, so look, I'm with Vishal on IPOs. I wait until the dust settles and you know what direction things are heading. Often there's a lot of guys that have been in the stock privately for a long time that want to get out. Alternately, if the markets are crappy like they are these days, you might get people who just want to be clear of the blast zone. Versus is held. It's held really well in the first week. And I think that's part of that's due to the fact that the more people hear the executives behind this deal, the more fans and even zealots the deal has. I'd be putting in your full 7,500 right now. I don't think there's any reason to wait. On Amped, man, my position in Amped has been clear for several years. I went all in on this thing when it IPO'd, before it IPO'd, when it was private. I know what the promise is. I know what the people behind it are capable of doing and are delivering on doing. But they really just need help on telling this story because I think they've been through it a little bit with a couple of large investors that made promises that their hands couldn't keep. The stock has been played with way more than it should have. It just needs to have a wider investor base than it does. One day this time will come, and when it does, it'll zoom. For now, I don't know that I'd jump in at this rate, at this price. I'd want to see a little bit of upward action, a little bit of shareholder enthusiasm. Kind of sick of watching old hands give way for new old hands. It really just needs to, there needs to be some sort of news catalyst that really jumps this thing back up to the 40s and 50s. When that happens, have your powder dry and jump all in. On OPT, their stock chart is just up and down for me. I don't see any real trends in it. It might be a good one if you're a trader, but to me, it's I want to see more from it to know what is the next 3 years, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months going to look like. Right now, for me, it's all Versus with a touch of Amped attention thrown in.
Very nice. Going big. Galen?
I agree with Chris in terms of IPO and Vishal, of course. This seems to be an agreement of all of us. IPOs are kind of like a death knell for jumping in right off the top. Just let it ride out and see what's going on. It did perform strongly today. What was it, Vishal? Up 11%?
Yeah, 12.64.
12.64 for the day, which is good. I'd like to see how it rides out the rest couple of weeks, but you know what? I wouldn't mind throwing 7,500 against it as well. Now, Amped is again showing that same sort of promise. It just has to level out. As Chris said, there's some external forces, I guess you could say, that are artificially suppressing what could be a really good story in terms of stock price. So when that drains out and we get, as he said, a wider stockholder base, it shows lots of potential because the deals are there. The guys are out doing their gig. They're cutting contracts. They're getting it in places that it will actually be effective. And yeah, I can see that it's actually materially coming to fruition. Optiva, as has been mentioned already, it's a bit of a roller coaster right now, and I want to see that their plan actually levels out. It's an interesting one. It's a not transformative, but a transitional one for anybody that wants to enter the world of 5G and stuff. They're providing that opportunity. I just want to see how well they play that out in the long term. Give me 6 months on that stock before I start throwing money at it right now. So yeah, for right now, 75 at Versus.
That is pretty cool. Do I get the bell ready? Do I get the bell ready? Michelle.
Ring the bell. Yeah, ring the bell.
Oh,
I will put
hey.
7,500. There we go. I'll split it though. I will put half of it in versus long-term position, and then the other half I am going to be looking to put it into AMP. And a bit of a caveat: I wouldn't just go in right now. I would hold that half. I think that's what 3,500. Hold that and wait for either a breakout above 18.5 cents or an opportunity to get in cheaper at around 10 cents. But I have, I want to go in, put the 7,500 mostly in versus right now, but eventually in AMP, given those two scenarios that I just laid out.
See how we went with the more high-tech electronic bell? So we're Web 3.0.
I did, yeah.
Today,
Futuristic.
So wow, Versus are, by the way, they are a client. VERS on the NEO Exchange. Gabe Renee, CEO, and as Chris mentioned, we have heard quite a bit from him lately. He's on our website around with the Jodies and the Maddies. AMPD is Amped Ventures, Amped on the Canadian Exchange out of Vancouver, and Optiva, ding ding, that is OPT on the Toronto Exchange. We can't guarantee anything. What we tell you or what has happened in the past will happen in the future. That's the disclaimer that lets you know that you need to do your own research and homework and all that good stuff on Versus, Amped Ventures, and Optiva. But while you're doing that, we'll be prepping and rocking and rolling the next Equity Guru Investor Roundtable.